Okay, so we decided that we're actually going to wrap up a little bit more on our last discussion because we had a few more remaining thoughts. So,
Our last discussion being, in case people are checking,
being
reading these out.
whether using food in training and whether or not it's a bribe and whether or not it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a very good point. My use of the word willing is not a helpful word because that's what the dog's
Thinking
is.
and feeling.
Yeah. So the word we want to use is compliant. You ask a dog to sit, is he compliant? Simply meaning, does he do it? Yes or no? And this gets away then all connotations of why he's not doing it that upsets you. So I think if you ask a dog to sit and he doesn't sit, and then we go to use food, it's a bribe. Mm-hmm. Okay?
So you've been blown off and
You've
now
been
you're
blown
resorting
off.
to food.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think we can also say that that's our definition of a bribe, but I think it's also possible that we might discuss whether or not there's a time where
That could
You want
also
to
be
bribe.
training. I mean,
Yes,
the first
well,
week of
that-
puppy class.
I know. Yes. No. Yeah, no, absolutely right there. That's
So it's still not simply.
essentially, it's not that. There's another thing to take into account. For, in training, we have food and we lure, and it works fine in this situation. Then you've got to get the food out of your hand, make sure and check and quantify it. The dog understands the hand signal.
Right. So I think the second
And then
important
the
question,
verbal command. But the next big thing is the point you just brought up when we paused. The dog does it in the kitchen. He doesn't do it in the park. No, you can't do this with a dog. You train your puppy at home, in the kitchen, and then you're going to take him to a dog park and let him off leash.
Or anywhere, in the pet store.
I know.
Anywhere.
There's not a hope in hell your dog's going to come and sit. And it needs to be done in steps. So you do it in the kitchen, then you do it in the living room, and then in your yard, then in your yard with another person there, and then other people, then another dog, then two other
Then
dogs.
on your street corner.
Then in their yard, with other dogs. Then you go out of your house. You stand outside the front door
Right.
and do it. Gradually, this is so
People need
important.
to do
People
this,
don't
yes,
understand it.
Well, people
What-
don't do it.
What they do
just
is
don't
they
do
put
it.
the dog on leash, they go for a walk, it's a disaster. They'll have a dog that pulls on leash, and they go to a park and let it off, they'll have a dog
This
that
is a
won't
whole
come.
other myth, though. It's the same one we did before. It's the he knows it.
He knows it.
Back.
Yeah, he knows it in your kitchen.
No, or
Yeah.
that they could ever know it. That a dog can generalize in that way. Well, he knows it. He learned it. He learned to sit. You taught it. We taught him that.
And what people need to
Now he's not
understand
doing
is
it.
he knows it in the kitchen when you ask him to sit. If your husband asked him to sit in the kitchen, he won't be as compliant. If you do it in the living room, the compliance, as measured scientifically as a percentage, it drops and drops and drops. You go outside. It takes a 25-30% drop
This could be an addendum for that as well.
in compliance.
Because
Well, this is just
it all goes
the next
full circle.
episode.
Yeah. And so again, don't walk your dog. You go outside and stand on leash. Then you go to the end of your garden path. You stand there, sit down. Oh, dog's still paying attention. Take 2 steps.
Well, so yeah, no, I mean,
people need to determine
right
when it's.
when it's a bribe or when food is bad. I mean, what I was gonna say is I don't think that this is not important. I think we've talked a lot, and we will continue to talk about the importance of taking small steps and getting closer and closer to the goal, and that you can't take a big step. But back to the question of whether or not what you're doing with food is a good thing or a bad thing in training, I think we covered one. One, it's maybe not a good idea if you've already been blown off and now you're resorting to food to get compliance.
If you have an established baseline, right? If you have an established baseline.
Yeah,
already.
I would say get your dog under control, go back and do the prior training in less distracting situations.
However, I think that what we've talked about is that the first time you're teaching a behavior, you whether you call it a bribe or whether you call it a lure and a reward, you do use food to get the dog to do this new behavior. And so I think the second question is, do you keep doing it or do you phase it out?
You phase it out.
And if you go to the park and your dog blows you off, but you really want to get him to sit, and so you lure him and you then reward him with the food treat, maybe that's okay one time, as long as the next time you do it, you find a way to remove the direct relationship between the behavior.
It seems the question, and where it maybe falls apart, is when you go to these new scenarios, as you're talking about, at what point do you start your training? Because the people are assuming the dog knows it, so they're not doing any preparation.
Mm-hmm.
But not only are they not breaking it down, but they're maybe doing any warm-ups or reinforcements. So the question then is, when you move from point A to point B being more difficult or challenging, do you bring a lure back initially?
Oh yeah, right.
You might have
teach
to
them another situation,
but then you phase it out.
Or the other way is, because the fact of the matter is, this ain't quick, and I said training should be quick and easy. So the other approach to it is to say, right, let's just trial by fire, and let's now teach people how to do a dog park recall with a dog that's untrained. Because the fact of the matter is, when someone comes to me and says, my dog hasn't got a recall, and he just won't come when called in the park, and I say, this dog? And they say, yeah. I said, well, he obviously did the last time he went to the park. What people do wrong is, when they catch their dog,
because he's there,
they take him home.
Mm-hmm.
What you must do is, when the dog comes, you say, good boy, go play. Mm-hmm. And now you find you can't get rid of the dog. And so in a park situation, I would say, right, let's go with an untrained dog.
That's a part of phasing out food as a bribe, because you're using a life reward.
We just cold turkey from the beginning. Mm-hmm. But I probably would use food in that situation, because I want a really good recall in the dog park. So I would wait till I get the dog, and I would say, good dog, treat, 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 which is something people don't do. It's always one bit of kibble. No, you're going to get 9 treats in a row, and I'm saying go play, and I'm going to repeat it. And in one session, like we have in our workshop, that German Shepherd that ran off, one training session, 5-10 minutes long. Now we have a recall off leash in a room with 60 dogs.
We're still trying to help people determine when the dog is compliant.
Well, I think we're trying
understanding.
Well, does he do it? Yeah.
No, understanding whether they're why they're being compliant. I know we're not supposed to say that, but that's exactly the problem. People don't know the difference between when there's a blow off and there's not.
They wouldn't bother
enough
about
training.
it. Let's just say, is the dog compliant? It's so simple, you see. If we now get out of the dog's head and watch the dog's behavior.
You can't use a lure every time a dog isn't compliant. That then becomes a bribe.
Right, so you're phasing it out.
Yeah.
And so, for example, at the dog park, where the first time you used food, you asked the dog to come, and you gave him 10 pieces of food and told him to go play. Mm-hmm. The next time, you probably don't give him 10 pieces, right? No. You might give him 5 pieces and tell him to go play. And you're phasing out the food reward and replacing it with this life reward, the go play, which is potentially
graded.
The reward is different than the bribe or the lure, though.
And the reward would vary according to the quality of the recall. See, what's happening is, with food, people give the dog a bit of food for everything he does. Well, that is stupid if you think about it, because you are rewarding just as many below average responses as above average responses. And what will happen with the recall, if you reward every single one, it will slow down and eventually the dog won't do it. Mm-hmm. So as soon as we get the first recall, and we make the point, we're then going to say, right, I'm really watching the recalls. Now to get a reward, it's got to be better than what you just did.
People are afraid of that. First of all, you should explain why rewards would devalue. I think you should explain that.
Well, if you're rewarding everything the dog does, the dog knows he's going to get a food reward when he goes back to you. So what's the hurry?
It's just the basic.
What's the hurry?
And it's just the basic reward. It's not a jackpot. It's not a plate.
Yeah, and the point in training is, once you get a dog to do something you want, now you want to make it better. And this has gone from training, the whole
people
differential reinforcement.
They're very afraid not to reward him. But he did it, so now I have to reward him.
Yeah, well, the rule of thumb...
If I don't, he won't do it next time.
So it seems like the big issue, is that you don't just keep using food the same way. You are always phasing it out / asking for more. And
here's another thing to the problem, you see.
Occasionally.
Let's think about the difference between a food vending machine, where you're always rewarded when you put money in, and a slot machine. What happens if the food machine doesn't deliver? You kick the machine, right? You put in another quarter. What happens? It doesn't deliver again. You give up on it. See, if you're on too rich of a reinforcement schedule, if you don't reward, the dog says, well, screw you. Mm-hmm. The whole point of thinning out food rewards and putting it on a differential reinforcement, even random, is now the dog won't stop working if you don't give him food.
But there must be enough reinforcement up front to make that work.
Yeah.
You don't go to slot machines and play once
no,
and play for 200
and
times
that's what I
nothing.
said. No, that's what I said, that jackpot on the first reward, a non-reward dog, and he comes, or Zuzu when she peed for the first time out there, I mean the first time, she got 16 treats from me, and I counted them out. And I want the dog to go, wow, that's different. But people have now got into this thing, everything the dog does, you give him one piece of kibble. And it's ruined dog training. The response reliability has gone down the toilet if you take food away from these people.
Well, people have lost creativity in how to play or reward it. Like,
Yeah.
It's like you could give 10 pieces of food, or you can play a game really quickly, or you can do nothing.
Well, because in a lot of classes now, they aren't off leash. It used to be a lot of fun. Everyone dressed up and we played and did all this stuff,
Anything that's static is going to become boring and expected.
Yeah.
Right, and they could be blown off.
But I think, we're not thinking about every tool in training. So here's my thing about tool in training, and food's a tool in training. Use it and then phase it out so that you don't need it. That's not to say you can't give food treats. I love giving Zuzu food treats just because I love her. I give her treats here. I give her treats when she has a pee that's more than 4 seconds long. She gets some treats. If it's less than 4 seconds, I just say, thank you, Zoo.
Right.
And but you don't need it. I could go out there now and tell her to go pee, and she's going to pee. It's on cue, and I don't raise my voice. I'm just, no, you need to go. Now let's go pee. She'll get distracted, blow me off a couple of times. I keep doing it. The same thing with the sit. You don't have to punish the dog when he doesn't sit, but don't give up on him. See, if you say sit, dog has to sit. And I don't care how long it takes or how many commands, he's going to sit, and then we repeat it again. I just say, well, that wasn't very quick. Come here and sit. Oh, good dog, go play. Then what you get is a really good compliance on demand, and the whole notion about this food thing is neither here nor there, because as you say, now we're using this massive life rewards that the dog can continue walking and sniffing, or the dog can run up and sniff another dog. So I think we are not teaching owners, number one, how to use food properly as a lure and as a reward. There's only one reinforcement ratio that makes sense, and that's a pretty thin differential reinforcement ratio. But we're not teaching them how to phase out our tools, which would include halters, harnesses, leashes, food, and even shock collars. You'll see someone with a training tool, and they're taught to use it, and they use it for life. Well, that's not a training tool, it's a management tool, it's a crutch, because you haven't trained the dog yet. So I think this is, what...
That's kind of the bigger picture. Regarding food,
it's
not good if you're continuing to give the same food reward for the same behavior. Then you're definitely not on the right track. If you're consistently giving for the same behavior.
Dog has to do more for less.
And further, to expand on that, whatever tool you're using, if you're still using it the same way you were a week or a month ago,
ain't a training tool.
Then, it's a crutch.
It's a management tool, to cover up the fact you haven't.
Well, I feel like we've given the people a little more...
well, I understand it better now.
Yeah, and me too.
Yep.
All right.
Sorry we were muddled beforehand.
Well, thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.